wasn't looking for adventure, I was looking for silence. In the fall of 2018, I decided to step away from the noise of the city and the constant workloads. I rented an old wooden hut online, located on the outskirts of a remote mountain village in Romania. The images suggested absolute serenity. Dense pine trees surrounding the place, a wood-burning fireplace, and no neighbors in sight. I arrived late on a cold evening. The fog wrapped around the tree trunks like silent spirits, and the stillness was so heavy, I could hear the sound of my breathing. Found the key under a wooden board, as the host had told me in his letter, and went in. The hut was warm, smelling of antique wood and cloves. I arranged my things, made a cup of tea, and sat in front of the window watching the darkness. Everything was perfect and beautifully desolate. First night, I slept deeply I hadn't seen in years. The next morning, I woke up energetically, but something small clouded my mood when I opened my eyes. The wooden rocking chair that had been by the window the night before, I found it pulled up to face my bed directly. I looked at him for a moment. I said to myself calmly, maybe I moved him while I was half asleep to put my clothes on him. I ignored it, put the chair back in place, and then spent the day wandering the surrounding forests, breathing the cold air and taking pictures. The second night, as evening fell, it started to rain heavily. I sat in the living room reading a book by the light of a dim lamp. Suddenly, the power went out. I didn't panic. That's to be expected in isolated places. I lit some candles that the host had provided in the kitchen and carried one with me into the bedroom to shelter in my bed early. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a strange feeling and a handle. There was extreme cold surrounding the room and a very light but distinct smell. Smells like wet dirt and cheap cigarette tobacco. I opened my eyes slowly, without moving. The chair was in its old place by the window, but the door to the heavy wooden cabinet was ajar. I tried to convince myself that an air current was the cause, even though the windows were tightly closed. I slowly extended my hand under the cover and picked up my phone to look at the clock. It was 3:15 a.m. To pass the time and try to calm my racing heart, I opened my phone's photo gallery to review the photos I had taken of the forest in the morning. I passed the pictures one by one. Trees, fallen leaves, gray clouds. Then I stopped. There was a picture I didn't take. Then another picture. Then a third. The photos were taken in the dark, based on a phone flash. The photos were taken from a high corner of the room, specifically above the closet. The pictures were of me, sleeping. In the first photo I was completely covered in a blanket. In the second, the blanket was pulled slightly off my shoulder. In the third photo, there was a dark shadow standing next to the bed, his hand extending towards my face. The details of the last photo were blurry due to movement, but the timing of its capture was clear at the top of the screen. 3:10 a.m. That's just 5 minutes ago. I didn't scream. Screaming in an isolated place like this will only bring death. I realized in that silent moment that the person who had taken the photos, who smelled of dirt and tobacco, was still with me in the same dark room. Maybe he's standing in the corner, or maybe he's hiding inside that dingy closet, watching me look at the phone screen. Very slowly, with a quiet, robotic movement that contrasted with the terrible terror gnawing at me, I turned off the phone screen. I yawned audibly, as if I was going back to sleep. I slowly retreated towards the edge of the bed. I didn't look around, nor did I look into any dark corner. I got up. I put on my shoes that were next to the bed without tying them. I picked up my car keys and wallet from the table. I left my bag, my clothes, my laptop, and my passport. I walked towards the hut door with steady, balanced steps, as if I were going to drink water from the kitchen. As soon as I reached the main door, I opened it, went out into the freezing cold rain, and closed it behind me quite quietly. As soon as I crossed the doorstep, I ran like crazy towards the car. I got in, started the engine, and pressed the gas pedal as hard as I could, cruising down the muddy, steep road. I never dared to look in the rearview mirror until I reached the first lighted gas station 2 hours later. Even today, I don't know who was in that hut and why he just photographed me instead of hurting me in my sleep. I contacted the police the next morning, and when they went to search the hut, they found it empty. But they found a small secret door in the floor of the closet that led to an earthen basement below the hut, full of newly lit cigarette butts. Marital isolation can be a magical experience, as the outside world disappears and only you and your partner remain. But the problem in completely isolated places is that the silence is so intense that anything that breaks that silence leaves an unforgettable impact. On the occasion of our 5th wedding anniversary, my wife, Nur, and I decided to escape the noise of the city and the fatigue of work. We rented an old restored stone house deep in the Scottish countryside. The house was located in a valley surrounded by hills on all sides, and could only be reached via a narrow dirt road. There was no internet, no cell phone coverage, and even electricity depended on a small generator that we turned off before bed to rely on candlelight and the warmth of a stone stove. The place embodied the meaning of complete isolation. On the first and second nights, the calm was perfect. We would sit in front of the stove, read, and speak in a low voice, as if we were afraid of awakening nature around us. When we blew out the candles and went to bed, it was literally pitch black. Darkness where you couldn't even see your hand raised in front of your face. On the third night, I woke up around 2 a.m. The stove had completely gone out, and the room was plunged into darkness and extreme cold. I felt a slight movement beside me under the heavy duvet. I reached out in the dark to look for my wife's hand, and she found it. Her fingers were a little cold, so I clasped mine with hers to warm them up. I whispered in a very low voice, so as not to scare her if she was half asleep. "Are you awake?" After seconds of silence, her gentle whisper came to me from the other side of the pillow. "Yes." I couldn't sleep. I gently wiped my thumb on the back of her hand and whispered again, "Are you cold?" "The place is so quiet I can hear my heartbeat." She replied in a low, calm voice, with a strangely slow rhythm. "I love this calm. It makes me feel like we're the only two people in the world." I smiled in the dark and clenched her hand tenderly. It was a warm and intimate dialogue, in a moment of absolute serenity. I closed my eyes and got ready to go back to sleep while still holding her hand. Suddenly, I heard a slight squeaking sound coming from the end of the corridor outside the bedroom. The sound of the heavy wooden bathroom door was slowly opening. I opened my eyes in the dark in surprise. A faint yellow light crept into the room, then the shadow of a person holding a small candle appeared, standing at the frame of the bedroom door. That person spoke in a clear, familiar voice. It was the voice of my wife, Nur, wrapping a wool shawl around her shoulders and saying in a sleepy tone, "Baby, are you awake? I thought I heard you whispering something in the room." Time stopped. The air in my lungs froze, and I felt a coldness paralyze every muscle in my body. My eyes were fixed on my wife, who was standing at the door several meters away, holding her candle and looking at me in amazement. If Nur was standing there, who have I been talking to for the past 10 minutes? Worse still, scarier. My hand was still under the duvet, and the cold hand I was tangled with. She gently tugged at my fingers at that very moment. I didn't scream, I didn't pull my hand. At that moment, I realized with a primitive instinct that any sudden movement or violent reaction could tragically end this calm. I swallowed my saliva with great difficulty, looked at my wife standing at the door, and said in a voice I tried hard to normalize, "No, I was just dreaming out loud. Go back to bed, it's cold." As my wife approached the bed with slow steps, I felt those cold fingers under the comforter slip out of my hand very slowly. She retreats towards the edge of the bed in the dark, leaving me alone with the silence of the room, and with the terrifying certainty that we were never the only two people in that house. We often associate horror with old places, dark corridors, and dilapidated wooden doors that squeak annoyingly. But true horror can come at the height of modernity and elegance, in places specially designed to give you a feeling of comfort and relaxation. Last fall, I decided to take a short vacation to get away from the stress of work and clear my mind. I rented a trendy house in the Joshua Tree Desert area of California. The house was a modern architectural masterpiece. Its design was based entirely on the open concept. The four walls of the living room and bedroom were made entirely of floor-to-ceiling panoramic glass, providing an endless view of the vast rocky desert. I got there just before sunset. The scene was breathtaking. The desert was colored in shades of orange and purple, and calm enveloped the place in a way that made you hear your breath. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and there was only me, the glass, and still life. As night fell, darkness completely swallowed the desert. In cities, there are always light sources, but in the heart of the desert, the night is absolute blackness. I turned on the warm house lights and sat on a glass-facing sofa, reading a book and drinking coffee. Here, I began to notice a side effect of the glass house design: the mirror effect. When the inside is lit and the outside is plunged into complete darkness, the glass turns into reflective mirrors. I no longer saw the desert, but I saw the reflection of the room, and my own reflection as I sat on the couch. I tried to ignore the vague feeling of discomfort. I knew theoretically that I was completely alone in this open, but the idea that I couldn't see what was outside, while those outside could see every detail inside with complete clarity. It was a heavy and confusing idea. At about 11 o'clock in the evening, I decided to turn off all the lights in the house so I could see the stars outside. I turned off the lights one by one until the house sank into complete darkness. I sat on the couch again in the dark, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the dim moonlight that began to highlight the features of the rocks and shrubs outside. As the vision gradually became clear, I noticed something strange on the glass panels. It wasn't completely transparent. There were spots or smudges that obstructed vision. I slowly got up and approached the large glass wall I had been sitting in front of all evening. When I was a few inches away from the glass, the blood froze in my veins, and my breathing stopped involuntarily. They weren't just spots, they were handprints. Dozens of human handprints stuck to the glass from the outside. Fingerprints were evident, some pulled down as if one was pressing his face and hands firmly against the glass. Others still and arranged in rows. The horror wasn't in the presence of the fingerprints themselves, but in two details that made my mind stop working. First, the fingerprints were very recent, and the condensation of cold water vapor on them in the night desert air proves that they had not been there for a long time, but had just been printed. Second, when I took a step back to see the entire scene, I realized that these fingerprints were not randomly distributed on the walls of the house. It was densely concentrated in only two spots. The first spot was on the glass facing the sofa I had been reading on for the past 2 hours. The second spot was on the glass facing the kitchen table where I stood to make coffee. There was someone, or several people. They were standing barefoot in the bitter cold of the desert, pressing their hands and faces against the glass, watching me with intense concentration and complete silence as I went about my evening routine. They were a few centimeters away from me, separated from them by a single pane of glass. The whole time I was looking at my reflection in the lit glass and feeling safe. They were standing in absolute darkness, looking directly at me. Just like in quiet horror stories, there was no room for panic. Any rapid movement or sudden light may provoke what is outside. I didn't light any lights. I crawled on the ground in the dark until I reached my bag and car key. I only took my wallet, my phone, and the key. I opened the side door very carefully, ran as fast as I could towards my car, got into it, started the engine. and set off on the way back without daring to turn on the headlights until I had moved half a mile away from that glass box. Even today, I cannot sit in a room with large glass windows at night, because I know exactly that what you can't see in the dark, he might be the same one staring at you.